Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Pain to Purpose podcast. This episode is all about the mamas, and I am joined with Liana Huseman. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in women's health and life transitions.
Hi,
Welcome, Liana. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Amazing. I want to kind of first talk about what you do. I know you specialize more in transitions, and I'm so interested in this topic. Can you tell the listeners really what your focus is and what you help people do?
Sure. Yeah. So I like to start off by saying that I'm first and foremost a mother, a wife, and just a woman trying to figure out, this whole game of life. I am a couple months shy of being 40 years old. I am licensed in California and I've been working with different populations over the last 8 years. And I've landed, so when I say populations, I was heavily in the LGBTQ plus population. I did a lot of work with them. And then I found a mentor that just really harnessed my ability to, or actually wake me up to know that I could be the therapist I wanted to be. I always thought I had to follow a rhythm, a rhyme, a blueprint, and that's really not what it's about. So I'm saying this purposely to let any viewer out there, any listener out there know that a therapist should feel right for who you are and what you believe in, and that there's therapists out there that really harness their abilities to be that person for you. So we're not one size fit all. Sometimes it feels like a dating game. But for me, I've landed in the space of womanhood, motherhood, parenthood. I had my own personal experiences, and the biggest piece is that if you can see me, I don't look Mexican, but I am Mexican American. Both my parents are Mexican as well. And my culture played a lot into me becoming a therapist and ultimately landing in the space of working predominantly with women. I come from more of a traditional submissive, be the submissive woman, wife, all of that. And actually, it didn't sit well with me. And I had to learn to become the woman that I wanted to be, which in turn helped me to decide that I want to work with other women to let them know that life and mixed with Western culture doesn't have to be what you think it is. It can be much more. And when I say I specialize in life transitions, that means that simply this: most of us women don't stop to process every impactful life experience. We tend to push through it. We're told to push through it. We're told to not cry about it, push and shove those emotions down. My culture had shaped me from a young age to just suck it up. That was what I was told, is to suck it up. We don't cry about it. You move forward and you literally okay, all right, I'm good. I'm moving forward. But with that said, we have compounded wounds that stay with us and ultimately shape us into the women that we are. And if we don't stop to take a look at that journey, to dissect what has happened to us, we can just allow these life experiences to own us. And then we end up living a life that maybe isn't as authentic as we would like it to be, or it could be. So I like to help my clients to stop and smell the roses and, talk about the thorns that have poked us and the soil that either is enriching us to grow or is inhibiting us to grow. So to help people to understand that your story is unique, it's important, and we need to slow down, talk about it. And eventually I hope that you can express it to other people, own your story, be the person you have always wanted to be, and to just have that empowered feeling to know that everything you've ever needed in life comes within, and you can utilize all of these tools whenever you're ready.
That was so beautifully said. You put it in such a perfect manner.
Thank you.
So, motherhood, you
Yeah.
talk about life transitions. Motherhood, the
Yeah.
biggest one I feel like of them all.
Oh, man.
I know, right? What are these tools that you give to your clients? What does a session look like for someone, new mother like myself? I had twins and it was just like, what? The whole shakeup. Like you said, I just bulldozed through it. Like next thing, next thing. And I'm a task woman as it is.
Mhm.
And then God gave me two and I lost my mind a little. How would you, as a client, what tools would you give me to start even processing I'm going through? Like, how can we even start this? Because it is almost like a slowdown, wouldn't you say?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, therapy can feel very frightening to a lot of people, even myself. By the way, if you have a therapist who's never been to therapy, question that because we all need it. It's a big part of our lives. And I think every single person on this planet can benefit from being able to take a break from life, sit in front of a non-biased person who has the ability to listen to, harness everything that you're saying so that you have a platform to get it out. We hold our emotions in our body. Whether you believe that or not, I didn't believe that in the past, but I do believe it now that we can hold it inside. And most of the time, we just need to empty. We need to empty. We are always pouring from you can't pour from a full glass or whatever is, bottle.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking
Well,
about.
you're full. You just you can't grow if you can't allow anything to come inside. So what we need to do is we need to release. And that's exactly how I start the session. Empathy goes
Mhm.
a long way. Most of the time I listen. The first few sessions, it's mainly about me listening, gathering information, asking appropriate questions to help you to unload and to understand why, not even what you're saying, but why you're saying the things you're saying and to just create a safe space. And that word has been social media is so great at just taking psychological terms or just taking our words and overusing them and giving them, inappropriate meanings and definitions. But it's true. You just need a place to sit where you can feel so comfortable inside of your own body. And that's the biggest part is to get to know yourself again. In order to talk about life and to talk about the things that you want to talk about, you have to get used to your own body, used to how you feel, where did the pain come up physically, emotionally, physiologically, all of the stuff. I help teach you that you can be in your own body by simply giving you empathy, genuine empathy, care, a listening ear, a non biased opinion or judgment. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you and to get you to a place where you're like, oh, I look forward to coming and releasing. So that's the first step. It is a tool to release. How many of you think about this? Have so much inside thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, but it never really makes it out, right? There's not a person you
Mhm.
feel most comfortable with to say, this is how I feel for the fear of judgment or the fear and whether they're judging you or more importantly, you're judging yourself. And I would say, secondly, I help my clients. This is a newer concept for me is the shame lens. We, most of us operate from the lens of shame. We are so good at shaming ourselves, our experiences, our thoughts. And when we shame, we're not in a loving space. We're in a space of collecting data, essentially, or we get addicted to collecting data to prove that we aren't worthy enough or that, oh, see, this happened again. So it must mean this. Instead of coming from a
Mhm.
loving place saying, this is what's happening, I'm going to work through it. I can work through it. I need to be here and I know it's going to get better. Right. So those are just two tools that I use to help people uncover the sides of them that they don't even know, they don't see. And ultimately, a therapist is a mirror. Plain simply put, if any of you are wondering, well, what is therapy? What is a therapist? There is still so much stigma behind it. We are simply a mirror. We listen, we process, and we give it right back to you. And you get to decide, is that what I'm really saying? Is that what I really wanted to convey? And if you're like, no, that's not it, then go, okay, let's try again then. Because if I'm hearing that, then everybody else around you is hearing that. More importantly, you're hearing that. So it's like perception versus perspective, which is really big, is understanding the difference between the two and learning how to start your day off from a different perception of the self to give yourself a newer perspective of life.
Wow. It's crazy because I hear you talking and you sound like a healer essentially, but one that is like you talk through. It's maybe not so much done with light work or your hands or like somatic therapy, like you're talking about those emotions stuck in your body, but it's a way to express it through talking and listening. Like you said before, internalizing everything. If we just keep shoving those emotions down, like it could lead to a disease. I've got an autoimmune disease like after I had my twins and
Oh.
I was in COVID and you to have twins during COVID. And then I owned a salon and there was just so much change. Then we moved to another state. I had no time to process that. And I didn't take the time to like rest my body, C-section, like I just was going, gone. And I developed Graves' disease. And then
Oh,
that led me to like a downfall of my pain and not processing that, where I was like forced to process that. So to have someone like yourself that has that support, I mean, it's priceless. I know you talk a lot about like identity exploration
mhm.
and with new mothers, I know I struggled with this. I don't know anyone that hasn't. Maybe people aren't as vocal about it, but it's almost like first you're like, okay, la la land. And then it's like, okay, this isn't going away. This is my new life.
Mhm.
And then you start feeling those feelings. Okay, I don't have the freedom. That was a huge one for me, especially being a single mom. That came a little later.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel trapped. And that's not a way to feel as a mom. Like,
Oh,
I feel guilty feeling trapped, but it should be celebrated. But I feel like these are normal things. So, like, how do you really help someone get to know themselves as a mother, but also as themselves again once they become a mother?
yeah, great question. Thank you for sharing all that you just shared about yourself. Like it's vulnerability. Your ability to be vulnerable is a really big piece to the healing process of not just motherhood or, life in general. So like you just said, I had twins. So, kudos to you. I don't wish that upon anybody. Like, I think it's amazing. Like, oh, you have two, you just get, twice the love, but it's twice the work. It's twice the experience and a C-section, no less. That's, I've had two and both different experiences. And then you moved across the country, right? Or another state or it doesn't even have to be cross country.
Yeah.
One county over is hard enough. But you just said I bulldozed. And the thing is, I do think bulldozing through life can be appropriate for a short time. Sometimes we just need to survival, right? We need to do things
Mhm.
that are appropriate in the time, in the moment to get us through to the next like landing spot, right? So like you're in the air, you need to land. So whatever you need to do in the air to get you through, please do that. I mean, healthier the better, but please do what you need to do. Bulldozing can be an effective tool to a certain degree, to a certain point. So with that,
If you know when to stop it.
yeah, you have to know when to say, okay, I need to sit. And typically that's where we come in, right? I'm an added layer of support. Sometimes even saying I have a therapist can feel awkward. It could feel shameful. It could feel like, oh, that means I'm weak. It's all these things. But in actuality, you're just adding to your support team. And not all of us have great support systems. Just because you have a big family doesn't mean they're effective, doesn't mean they're compassionate enough, doesn't mean they give you what they need. My husband and I both went through experiences of feeling very hurt by what people would say to us because we were struggling in certain ways. And you become vulnerable and you're like, I'm going to put myself out there. And then you don't get what you need in return. That's where we come in.
Mhm.
That's where we can help to be that person. Yes, we have trainings, we have education, all of this stuff. Education doesn't make you a great therapist. I think life experiences make you a great therapist and being able to say, I can relate to you on some level. And even if I can't, I'm going to be there to hold space for you so you can teach me about your life. Right. So vulnerability is number one. I encourage vulnerability. That's why creating a safe space, creating a safe therapeutic relationship is the most important thing you can do because that allows for people to get vulnerable. And I want to make one clarification, something I had to learn the hard way not too long ago. Vulnerability is not truth speaking. That's something that I think a lot of people, especially social media driven, is people say, oh, I'm vulnerable. I'm vulnerable. It's like, no, you speak the truth. And it's admirable that you speak the truth. But if you can't connect with the emotions behind it, that's not vulnerability.
Mm.
You're still bulldozing through. So that's one thing I often have to ask my clients. Like I ask, do you think you're vulnerable? Most people will say yes. But when we dissect it, it comes down to no. In actuality, you just speak the truth. And I know it can be addicting to speak the truth, right? Especially in cultures that haven't taught you to do so. Once we get that down, and I start to see the vulnerability, right? And I meet my clients with compassion. Compassion is what most of us have never been modeled to do, self compassion. So when we talk about healing, how do I get my clients, how do I help my clients to find their identity again? It's not anything that has to do with external experiences. I don't say, oh, another word that gets thrown around is self-care. What the hell is self-care? What is it really? No one really knows what it is. People go get massages, mani-pedis, go out for drinks with the girl. That might have been self-care in your 20s or before kids, but after, motherhood, our self-care has to be intentional. What does intentional love look like? And we have to start with self-compassion. How do you love yourself? Do you love yourself? Do you know how to speak gently to yourself? Do you know how to uplift yourself? More importantly, do you know how to not judge yourself for where you're at? If you don't know how to do that, finding who you are, identity, will feel nearly impossible, and you will struggle consistently until we learn how to take that shame lens off. We stop self-intellectualizing and we start to self-understand. Once we get there, I think it's a beautiful place because even my clients' faces change. All of a sudden, they come into session with this lightness of, this is what I did for myself. And what I did for myself could literally look like, yes, I feel mom guilt, but it's because I love my child so deeply and so hard that that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from the inability to just enjoy life, right? So there we go again, perception versus perspective. So I would say that's where I start, is helping people to learn how to truly love themselves through self-compassion and the ability to slow down and to accept what is and to rid of the irrational expectations we have of ourselves. So look, for instance, you're healed in 6 to 8 weeks. That is such bullshit. If you're not healed, it could take years. Like my daughter is 5 and I'm still maneuvering through it. It's a forever process. And I wish our community, our culture would get on board to know that we're forever changed and it is going to be the rest of our lives. We have to put the work in for the rest of our lives to just help understand where we're at and where we want to go.
I just the growth, like the evolution of just continuing to grow. It's so important. Oh my gosh, I love you. You're so fun. I'm like, oh, I could just talk to her forever. You speak on intentional self-care,
Mm-hmm.
but you also speak of unintentional self-care. And I was curious, like, what's the difference between the two? I was curious on what you meant by that.
So this one is tricky because self-care is thrown at us from every angle, right? Like, oh, you need self-care. You need self-care. But when you think about it,
Yeah.
after becoming a mother, your needs and wants and desires have changed drastically overnight. We all have different
Mhm.
experiences. Not every mother, there's not going to be one mother that's the same. And it's hard because I think mothers think they have to say things like, I'm so in love. My children are everything. I wouldn't trade this for the world. And it's like, it's really cool when you have that story, but that's not everyone's story. That's not everyone's feelings. We all have different, experiences, and we will be the mothers that we are supposed to be. And I think women get down on themselves because they're not. So let's just normalize that for a sec. You are the mother you're supposed to be. And the sooner you can accept that, the the weight of the guilt will start to lift, right? Some of us utilize resources. I need a nanny. I need daycare. I need this. I need to go out on vacations without my kids. I need whatever. You have to do what you have to do for you. If you go against your authenticity of the self, what you need, your children will be affected 100%. So you have to be able to get to a place of like, okay, I'm this type of mom and I'm okay with it. This is what I need, right? So we're speaking truth to ourselves. With that said, what self-care looks like is going to be different on everyone. And again, Western culture, social media, I bring that up a lot and I'm not against it. I think there's so many positives to it. There are going to be so much negative effects of social media as well, but it's just one of our biggest driving points right now. That's where our news comes from. Like we are really immersed in it. It's in the palm of our hands 24/7.
Mhm.
And it could be helpful or it could be detrimental to your health as a mom. When you look at other people's stories, like, cool, good for them. One, you don't even know if they're telling the truth. You're looking at a 15-second story or a 30-second reel of someone curating what they get to put on social. Please know that if anyone's listening, It's curated. There's not a single, unless we're in the Truman Show, nothing is authentic. So remind yourself that people get
It's supposed to look great.
yes, it's supposed, I mean, all the filters and all of the stuff. So cool for them, wish them well, but turn inward and go, what do I want for my life? What do I need for my life? What does it really look like? Because in that little clean section, there's just, there's got to be a mess, a tornado of stuff around them. So self-care looks what it needs to look like for you, but the main intent is it must be purposeful. You have to feel a certain purpose. It has to move you. You have to feel rejuvenated after you do it. It needs to feel guilt-free. So for me, prior to having kids, I used to get a mani-pedi every like 11 to 14 days. I'd get a massage once a month. I'd have to go out with certain people. But going to the movies was a big deal for me. I'm a visual learner. I sci-fi, fantasy, like Avatar is one of my favorite movies because it literally takes me out of reality. Like I can literally just, sit there like this is amazing, right? After becoming a mom, I didn't enjoy all those things like I used to. But yet I still thought, okay, self-care, go do those things. And I would be miserable. I'd miss my babies. And then I'm like, oh, I cannot sit here for an hour to get my mani-pedi. Like I want to be done. One of the movies, I just kept checking the time. And I started checking for all the germs. Like I just had to, it was hard, right? So what I learned, and it's through a book called Real Self-Care, I was able to actually finite this idea is that actually I thought I was, a pioneer in this. I was like, oh my gosh, there's something different about intentional self-care. And then I found a book and I was like, oh no, this person definitely pioneered this, but she gave me better insight. It has to feel meaningful, purposeful, and it needs to fill your cup. If those three things, at least those three things, there could be more. If those things do not exist after you engage in this activity, it's not self-care to you. It's just something that you're doing to distract yourself. It's to get out of the moment. And if you're only trying to get out of the moment of motherhood just to jump back in, you're just on this perpetual cycle of this is not going to work. You have to be able to leave the situation, right? Home life, your kids, with intention. I am going to go love myself, right? Self-compassion. This is my moment to love myself. It's a non-negotiable. Just like it's a non-negotiable to not, you have to feed your children, change their diapers. Like this is non-negotiable for you as well. You cannot just say, I'm going to do this, maybe not. Set the intention. This is for me. This is what I need. It's what I want. And though I might have a little bit of mom guilt when I go, I know that this is going to be beneficial for me, but more importantly for my kids. If I'm not good, my kids aren't good. So that should be a no-brainer right there. I'm not good, my kids aren't good. So if you keep living for your kids and think that you have to be everything for them 24/7, but you are depleted, if you don't think they feel that, if you don't think they see that, if you don't think they're going to be affected by that, you're absolutely wrong, right? They're an extension of you. So you must be able to say, I'm going to go love myself and do something that fills my cup. What does that look like? For me, walking. Oh my God, just walking. How boring did I used to think that was? I had to go run. I had to go kickbox, box. I had to do all these things. And now I'm like, yo, I just need my good walking shoes and I need to walk. And people don't realize that walking meditation exists, as in this. Oh, look at that house. Look at the colors. Look at the flowers. Look at that tree. Oh my God, that landscape is beautiful. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Doesn't matter what you're thinking. It's that you're present. You're in your body for however long that walk is, and you're able to breathe again, taking deep breaths. We do a lot of shallow breaths. We just slow the process down. Do something that is intentional, that feels good. And when you come back, you can say, that felt good. That felt good. And then you move forward. It could look like reading. It could look like talking to a friend. It could be journaling. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't matter. But whatever.
Yeah. Like whatever.
No. And you don't need to post it either, right? It's just for yourself. So just go do whatever you need to do for yourself.
Right.
That when you come back, it meant something to you. If it doesn't mean anything to you, it's not self-care, it's a distraction. And the more of those distractions, again, you're compounding your experiences. until you somehow implode and then you have a meltdown and you got to start all over again. Not that they need to happen, meltdowns need to happen, but maybe not as frequent. Yeah.
You say this, and I'm thinking of instances where I can really gauge, like, when I come back to my children and I feel recharged,
Hmm.
or it's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see them," or if it's like you say, even if it's just going to the gym, filler whatever filler stuff, and then I come back and it's not even a sigh of relief, it's more like, "Okay, I'm back to this."
Yeah.
Like, your body tells you, was that a true recharge? I feel like you know the difference. Go
If
ahead.
don't, you just said something, Kim, really quickly. You're like, you know the difference. Some people don't know the difference. How about that? Like, they're still thinking they're doing stuff and not realizing that there is a difference. So the key here is to become more aware of what you feel, how you feel. That would be step number one is, do you have the ability to slow down for just 30 seconds and check in with yourself
Yeah.
and say, was that good for me? If you can't do that, we need to back it up. We need to start
Yeah.
way back here, you know?
Honestly, I am a cannabis user, and sometimes I just need to take a gummy and walk and process things. Or even as a mom, I'll start tasking in my head,
Hmm.
and I feel like that helps me, like, slow down and be more aware.
Hmm.
I'm a very, like, internal person as it is, but I can't imagine for someone that is just not as tapped into who they are, the process that you have to take them on, it's probably a longer process, I would imagine, because like you said, not a lot of people have the awareness of that. When you can slow down and start learning who you are,
Yeah.
that is game changer for just anyone, women, men, anyone. You can just move through things more quickly because everything's really a lesson. So it sounds like you get your clients to engage them into getting to know who they are as a person at their core level.
That's the goal. It doesn't happen all the time because also some people aren't ready for that. And as a therapist,
Mm,
you feel defeated. But
I bet.
therapy only works, or like self development in any form, whether that's listening to people on YouTube, reading books, going on little journeys, self declaration journeys. But if you're not ready for that, it's not going to work for you. It's just not. You have to be ready. And it's deterring too when you see a client, you're like, oh, we could do so much work together. But if they're not ready to get to a place of vulnerability, because you have to, vulnerability is key. You have to get to a place of being honest with yourself, not with me, not your therapist, with yourself. That can be
Yes.
difficult for people. So again, any listeners, like, know that it doesn't happen overnight. Making the decision to go to therapy. I mean, my daughter, I was already a therapist, obviously, and it took me 11 months to go sit in an office because I had a lot to say and I wasn't ready to say it. I cried and cried and cried, and I needed the cry. Like, a part of it was one session, I cried for 45 minutes. I didn't say a word, and I was like, thank you. That was wonderful. So I left because I just couldn't cry at home. I didn't want my daughter to see that. I didn't want anyone to know I was really suffering. And, you become a mom and everything changes. So yeah, it's self-awareness and mindfulness. How about just the word mindfulness? Most people do not even know the definition of mindfulness. They think it's like serving others. I'm mindful of other people. I'm mindful of what I do. It's like, okay, I understand how you're using that word, but mindfulness in a nutshell is being as aware as you can be, being fully present without judgment. I did this mindfulness retreat. I did it for a business, and I met with the staff on 3 different occasions. And I remember asking, does anyone know the definition of mindfulness? It was like 20 some people. No one knew. I was like, why isn't this being taught in school from like kindergarten all the way up? And that's a different topic and subject there, but
Yeah.
be given to us. So what that makes me realize is that if we're not teaching mindfulness in the home, let's just add that to the other tasks we have, aside from keeping your children alive and all the stress that comes with it, you have to teach them mindfulness. If you don't know, you're not teaching it, hence generational trauma, right? We're only being taught what our generation above us knew. And if we don't go out and get more information, more resources, we continue to live a life of Well, a life that's not serving you, essentially.
So you talk about generational trauma and how this affects how you raise your children.
Mhm.
I have become aware in certain instances where it's that aha moment, like, "Oh my gosh, this is my what happened in my childhood," and I was very intentional about this not wanting to happen or me parenting this way. How do you help people heal with that and navigate that? Because for me, that was such a painful moment. Like, you talk about shame and,
Mhm.
oh, the shame was like, I mean, crying, like agony,
Yeah.
where I'm like, you know, beating myself up in my mind. You talk about that, and I'm like, it's so important to have that good self-talk, but how do you navigate when someone becomes aware of this? Say I came to you and I'm like, "I'm aware of this, but I don't know how to fix it." How
Mm.
can you help your clients with this?
Okay. Yeah. This is a very important topic. So I'm just going to address to something what you just said, which is I'm aware of it. How do you fix it? There's nothing to fix. We're not fixing anything. What we're doing is we're taking time to understand first what is generational trauma and what does that look like in your experience, right? 'Cause it's different on everybody. You can have siblings yourself. You have twins who you're raising them, I'm assuming essentially pretty similarly, we all have free will to think as we do, perceive as we do. So we interpret different life experiences in such a different way. What one of your children may later on in life, and they say, "Oh, this was our childhood." The other one might say, "What are you talking about? That was not our childhood." And you're like, "We literally grew up together, maybe even in the same room. We went to the same schools. We probably mom put us in matching notes. I don't know. Like we live the same." But first and foremost, we have to understand how you perceived your life. We talk about like what was it for you? And then we have to take it a step back with or just take it one step back of let's explore what your younger self. So inner child work is something I'm very passionate about. What we talk about experiences in your past. So we do have to go backwards, which can be painful, right? You just said I was crying because you're talking about wounds that happen when you're a child that we tend to suppress. And then we learn to live with it. And then we have trauma responses that become our coping mechanism. Perfectionism, that's one of them, where we have to survive our childhood. And then we get into adulthood where we're like, okay, we don't have to survive anymore. We've made it. But we have taken the reality that we gave ourselves from childhood and we brought it into our adulthood, right? Brene Brown says this. I don't know how she said it word for word, but essentially she says something along the lines of, what is the reality and what is the story you told yourself? Or what is the story you're telling yourself? So as children, when things happen to us in a way that's discomforting or it's traumatic or it doesn't matter. And we can't judge the T's, right? The big T's, little T's, big trauma, small trauma, we all have them. It's just
Mhm.
how it plays out, how we digest them, did we get any support in this? Did anyone come and talk to you about this trauma? Most of the time you're going to hear no. No. And that's to no fault of our parents. It's just, they only know what they know. So if they didn't know how to sit down and process it with you, it's not going to get processed. So we take this bit of information and we have to make sense of it. We just do. But we're making sense of it from the underdeveloped mind, depending on how old you are, right? Our brain, our frontal cortex doesn't close into adulthood. So we have many years where we're working with an underdeveloped brain trying to make sense of it. So if we didn't have anyone to guide us through a traumatic experience, our little brain goes inward. Usually it's our fault. We take it to the self. We don't have the ability to say, well, maybe they were having a bad day. Or maybe mom and dad really don't know how to do this. It's not really my fault. Hell no. We take it to it's our fault. We did it. How do we fix it? So when you say fix it, that's from your young mind. How do we fix it? So for instance, if someone doesn't get their emotional needs met, they might turn to, well, if I'm the perfect child, I do everything right, that's going to define my self-worth. I can show people that I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of attention. I'm worthy of care. We learn how to find ways to do that. Perfectionism, people pleasing, and people don't really look at it that way. It's actually pretty glamorized in our world today. Like I'm a perfectionist. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
it can help you in certain areas of your life, but it can also be detrimental to certain areas of your life. And usually that comes It looks like it damages the relationship with self and others. So that little story you're telling yourself, if I'm good, if I'm perfect, if I can only help others and not myself, I can be seen, heard, and loved. And so you take that story with you and then you take it into it. So that's called survival mode. You're surviving. You're trying to figure it out, trying to get your own needs met. And then you go into adulthood. And we as adults, if we don't stop that or take a moment to say, I actually don't need to be a perfectionist, or that's not helping me, it's hindering me, we take it through adulthood. And ultimately, it affects the core relationship with the self, and then it's poured onto others, right? Or experiences. And we can never live fully authentic to who we are, who we are meant to be, because we're so stuck with this story that we have told ourselves. So in our sessions, we have to break that story down. You have to figure out, when did you tell that story to yourself? How has it played out in your life? Is it serving you? And more importantly, that wasn't the reality of the situation. The reality was your needs didn't get met in this area. And I need to
Mhm.
speak to that person. Now we start speaking to that wounded soul and we help them. I have my clients write themselves letters, or they can print a picture out of themselves at that time where they knew they were affected. We have to start nurturing that part. That's your inner child. Your inner child lives within you. Another word that gets tossed around is I'm triggered. It just blows my mind. But oh my God, I'm so triggered. It's like, no, you're upset. Triggered comes from your past. You have physiological reactions, beating heart, sweating. You might lash out. You might freeze. You might go inward. You might disassociate. Like, these are physiological responses to a trauma that's unresolved. A trigger is your inner child that's still wounded, that's coming up, that's trying to protect you. Like, oh, remember this, we're about to be abandoned right now. You need to do everything at all costs to not feel that way. And it can look like, I'm going to leave you before you leave me. I'm going to be a people pleaser. I'm going to do all these things to get you to, love me and see me. So then I ask my clients, who's here right now? Is it you or your wounded 10-year-old self? Because if it's your wounded 10-year-old self, that's what you're operating from. As an adult, you're operating
Mhm.
from that wounded self. And that's why you're making decisions that don't feel right to you. That's why people stay in relationships longer than they should, or they harness abuse and they don't know why they're doing it. It's because their inner child is now present. So I have to help my clients switch the roles. Like, hey, no, you're the adult. We're going to move you back into place. And now we're going to nurture your inner child, give your inner child what they needed. Things like, I love you. You're good enough. It wasn't your fault. All of those tools to help that inner child heal so we don't have to bring them into our adulthood and live lives that don't feel quite right.
Oh my god, I just got, like, lost in that because it hit home for me a lot. I just discovered, like, this past year, like, the perfectionist, like, I think about just years of my mindset was like achieving greatness. I didn't realize I was operating, like, as my inner child that just needed, like, love and attention and affection. And now being a mom and I moved back home to Indiana where my family is, and then I saw these patterns unplay in front of me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly why I was doing that." Like, it was so essential for my healing process
Yes.
and to be a better mother, and like you said, the not people pleasing, and you can't be your authentic self, and it's a never ending battle when it's really just not loving yourself. But the crazy part is now that I'm a mother, it's like I'm having my own struggles, and, abandonment wound can be maybe your parents didn't physically abandon you, they just really worked all the time, and,
Mm.
but as a child, you don't understand that.
Like,
You're just like, "My parents don't love me," or they would spend time with me,
yeah.
and then you start playing out like you're in adulthood, it's, you know, that perfectionism or overachievers. It's like we're all screwed up on some level, but it was so healing for me to be like, "Wow, I really overanalyzed that as a child." Like, she was just stressed out and young, like,
Oh,
but as a child, we really internalize that,
we do.
and it's such an effect on every relationship in our lives, with our spouses, our children, ourself more than anything. So I love that you elaborated on that because it is so important. to heal that inner child, because the first 7 years of our lives is really what programs us as children. And then we kind of replay that pattern until either A, we become more aware and start like correcting course, or
Right.
like you said, even say, I'm a fixer. That's always been my thing. Like, solutions, because I'm a survivor. So I'm like, okay, we just got to keep going. I'm the one who just made things happen. We're going to talk about mom guilt. I know we all have it. What advice can you give to the moms when it comes to this? And I mean, like, mom guilt that like eats you up inside. I struggle with this when it comes to my children not having a father. It's something that weighs on me, and I don't know how to overcome that. I tell myself, okay, this is, it is what it is, and the future can always be different. And I try to just focus on the positive. But for someone that's actually in the midst of it with young children, how do I overcome that? I don't usually ask questions for myself personally, but I'm like, while we're at it.
I think that's a very complex question because even using the word like overcome or fix or what's the solution, right? I mean, I think you know where I'm going with this. I would ask you, well, what does it mean to you to have a solution for everything? What we have to go back to, and I understand the question, like you're saying, the guilt of, the separation of your children and their father. Like it's not ideal. And I am really sorry that that's your experience and that's your kid's experience. And we all have these ideas of how life's going to play out, right? So I think the first thing I would address is expectation. What expectations, one, did you have going into motherhood? What expectations did you place on yourself? Because I think for most moms, if you talk to any mom and say, what were your expectations? It's not going to match up to where you're at now. So when we have expectations, we're actually setting ourselves up for massive disappointment. And here's something that a lot of people don't grasp is that disappointment comes from within. Another person or situation, they cannot disappoint you. It's how we feel about the situation. We allow people to disappoint us.
That is absolutely priceless. So I know from obviously my own experience and friends as well, having a child can really shake things up in a marriage, especially when identity, just
Mhm.
your own issues that you're going through, and then everything on top of that. What advice do you give for your married clients on how to deal with that so they don't grow apart and they can actually grow together and individually?
Yeah. So this is, I feel like, a loaded question for sure. And I don't think there's one answer in how to approach this. And I just want to frame that I'm not a couples therapist. I leave that to those specialists. And I think they are such talented individuals. I cannot do two people. I can't like be in a room and do the back and forth. Like it's really hard. So take a certain person. So for me, if I were to speak to my, my one-on-one client who is saying things like this, one, I advocate for couples therapy 100% because there's two different experiences going on. Much like I mentioned that two siblings can grow together, but they perceive differently. So is as a married couple, like a father and a mother, it doesn't matter. Two parents, let's just call it that. Two parents, no matter the gender or how you identify. It's two people saying, we are bringing life in or we're adopting or it doesn't matter. However we get our child, everything in our life is going to change. And I don't think we really know this. I don't think you could ever prepare a parent for what parenthood is. And I think managing expectations is a big one, is because think about it's for those who have birthed their children, how many expectations did you put on this pregnancy, labor delivery, recovery, what child you were going to get, how your marriage was going to flourish, how wonderful, like you just set yourself, you have 9 months at least to start preparing your mind for what you think it's going to be like. I say this to even pregnant moms that are getting ready, even whether this is your first, your second, your third, is trying to really look into how you're managing your expectations. Expectations can be the death of us because that's what creates disappointment. We create disappointment inside of us. Yes, you have every right to feel angry at someone, to feel sad about a situation, to feel infuriated, but disappointment comes from within. we have these expectations and then all of a sudden they don't come true or it's not reality. And then we go into ourselves like, oh, that's awful. But in actuality, we created that. And I want to preface, I'm not saying feeling disappointment is your fault. It's not. It's a feeling. It comes in, but we can manage the disappointment. I would ask my clients, like, what was the expectation? And what's the reality? And how are we managing what reality has brought to us? So if we stay in the, I thought it would be like this, I thought it would be like that, it's okay that you had those expectations, but that's not reality. We need to get present. We need to work with the facts. We need to work with the current emotions. We need to work with where you two are actually at. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that. They have these ideas of what it should be, right? Should. That's one of the words I ask my clients to take out of their vocabulary as much as possible and work with the what is. What is your partner feeling? What is your partner going through? Postpartum depression is very common in fathers, by the way. Most men don't know that. They can even adapt to morning sickness. They can have nausea. Like they can mimic what mothers are feeling. Not mimicking on purpose, but it's like we are two people that are living this life. It's overwhelming to the highest degree. Having a child shakes everything up. And no, I don't think anyone is truly prepared for that. We have ideas of what it could be, and we start to, almost fantasize. But that's not the reality. Even with mothers who are reading all of those books, what to expect, or they start Googling or researching, I even say, hey, take that with a grain of salt because this article or this book is talking about a baby that's not yours. Your baby is your baby. This baby comes out with a personality. They don't even know what they want or what they need, what they can show you, they can express. You have babies who sleep through the night. You have babies who eat anything, who drink. Then you have the opposite. Our babies do things to us that, you know, we're not equipped, right? The first one, at least, we're really not equipped. And we allow the guilt, the shame, all of these feelings of I should be more, I should do this. And then with that, I think it creates a natural separation of you and your partner. And in fact, we should be turning inwards, right? You have the couple. A lot of times we do this, like we're following or chasing our significant other when we're not. And then that's also calling girlfriends, calling moms. He's doing this, she's not doing that. Like we're going outwards. The one thing I recommend is coming inwards. You have to see each other, meet each other where you're at, give each other grace in this experience. So one of the best advice that was ever given to me is, I think my daughter was about 4 months old and I just got back to work and going part-time. I was at my own pace and I had a supervisor. I worked for a group private practice. Her name was Emily Sellis. And I was kind of, getting hard and down on myself. Like I should know this and da, da, da. And she goes, how old's your daughter? I was like, oh, she's 4 months. She goes, and so are you. You're only 4 months old. Boom. It just hit me like, oh yeah, I've never done this before. My husband's never done this before. Why am I setting these irrational expectations, these expectations that are just beyond me? Like I'm supposed to know everything. I'm supposed to be able to do it all. I'm supposed to be able to juggle it all. I have a client right now. Her daughter's 3 months old. She's exclusive breastfeeding mom. For you mamas out there that know this, it's a different world. And she got laid off. Her whole department got laid off. So now she's job hunting. She's going on interviews. And I'm like, when do you sleep? She couldn't even tell me. She goes, well, I get up every 3 hours, even if my daughter's asleep to pump. And, you moms know that this is a must in the first few months. And I just had her list off everything she did. And I'm like, so you're doing all of this and you're not sleeping adequately. You're not drinking enough water. You're not eating enough. And you expect to be your best self, your best version. And your husband is supposed to know how you feel through all this. He's just supposed to know without you telling him. And she just started crying. And she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it because she was bulldozing through the experience. When we slowed it down, she's like, I don't even know how I'm alive. She said that. I don't even know how I'm alive right now. And I said, exactly. Yet you're functioning from this place inside that says, I have to have it all figured out. And when you can't turn into your partner and say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I feel. This is what I think. This is my current experience. And then After that, shutting up and letting them have their moment. I am guilty of this, but a lot of us moms put dads down. Like, I'm the one that had the baby. I'm the one that went through labor and delivery. You just had it, and it's like, no, they're going through it too. They're also 4 months old as a father, 4 months old, as a husband with a child. And guess what? If you have multiple children, each birth, you set the clock back. Now you're 2 weeks old as a mother of two, 3 weeks old as a mother of three. Like, we have to set the clock back and be able to say, I am exactly where I need to be. I need to function from a place of, this is all I know right now. I need to be here. And so for couples, when we turn in, check in on each other. What do you need? How can I help you? Yeah, I'm the mom. I know how to do everything, but you also have someone who's there, having conversations with them, just letting them know, what am I experiencing, and having that mutual respect to say, and how are you doing? How are you handling? Because what you might feel is overwhelming, your partner might not feel as overwhelming, and vice versa. And you're playing this game of like, oh, they should know and this, and look at me, I'm doing this, and he's doing that. And he's just, well, maybe he needs some direction. Maybe you're a bit controlling. How about that? A lot of us moms want to be in control of everything, but yet the moment their partner doesn't do one thing for them, how are they supposed to know? Right? So it starts with empathy for one another's experience. And that's something I had to learn too, where I would get upset with my husband. And I'm like, I'm the one that experienced this. And he's like, wait a minute, but I experienced this. Like, this is just as impactful as it is to you, but it might look different on each other.
Mm.
So having grace, some empathy, and genuine curiosity about what the other one's experiencing, right? We do the whole mind reader game. It's not helpful when you haven't slept in months, when you're not eating properly, when you haven't moved your body, if there's any postpartum complications, even postpartum anxiety, depression, OCD. Let's not talk about the physical aspect that happens, right? And the unrealistic, this is the part I hate the most. We have the unrealistic expectation from Western culture that tells us we're healed in 6 to 8 weeks and we need to get back to it. We don't. Even if you guys have to go back to work, and I'm sorry, mamas, the ones that are forced to go back to work because you need to work. Sometimes it's non-negotiable. You have to. You're not healed, not even close. Our organs aren't even in the place that they need to be at that time, right? A minimum of a year. I would say for me, it was 2 years where I started to feel normal or back to myself in some way or capacity, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the above. It takes time. It takes time. Stop rushing the process. You can pivot. You can do things you need to do, but ultimately we need to check in with ourselves on a daily basis and check in with our partners. And if therapy is needed, couples therapy, any other layer of support that is effective, that's a key word. Don't be calling your single friends. Don't be calling people who have no idea what you're going through. You're not going to get the best advice from them. Pick resources that can help you in your current and specific time of need and what might be most helpful for you in that moment. And sometimes that also means taking a step back from people, places, experiences that just do not serve you at that time.
I wish I had known you then and had access to this, because me and my best friend had children at the same time. And like you said, it's a perspective thing. I thought calling her and then us just like complaining about each other's husbands getting belts. We really needed you. We really needed you because I was doing exactly what you said, going the other way instead of going inward.
I'll do it. I've done it. You just got to check yourself.
Right? You're like,
Wait a minute.
yeah.
Wait a minute. So it's hard. It's difficult.
I've never heard that advice ever. If you are struggling with this or just have a new child, this information is priceless. I'm like waiting for your book to come out. I'm just enthralled in all your knowledge. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love her. I'm going to steal her Andre. She's mine. So, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you and have access to this beautiful work that you're doing to help
Yeah.
navigate this hard journey as becoming a mama?
Sure. I have a virtual practice online in the state of California. I do mindfulness training on the side too. So it's a bit of coaching. And with the coaching is I can see people out of state. But so for now, this is more of a part-time thing for me. I am a mother
Sure.
first. So right now I'm comfortable with saying that I'm a mother first. No, I lied. I am a wife first, and then I'm a mother. Because if you don't choose your partner first, it spirals down. You have to choose your partner. You got to lean in, and hopefully that's an option. If it's not, we need to pick someone who aligns with our values, our beliefs, and what we have going on, right? So it doesn't have to be a partner, but someone that gets you, someone that makes you feel good and you're at ease. Um, and more than anything, I submerge myself in knowledge, education. So a lot of the stuff too that I'm spitting out at you all, I don't practice every day. I have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, practice what you preach, practice what you learn, because a lot of us go into the familiar. The familiar is what we learn from our culture, what we learn from our past. So if you don't think that I don't get spicy first and foremost and yell, I still do, or I give attitude, and my husband has to check me, and then I'm like, "Okay, wait, what's the apology? I need to apologize and start over." So just know that there's no one perfect way to do this, but you can enlist in someone like myself or someone, in your surrounding city or anywhere close to you to help you with this. Weekly check-ins, it's not just we're going to dive deep, we're going to talk about our childhood. No, we talk about what's going on now, that your therapist should assess what's most priority. We are a great reminder to all the things that are overwhelming in life. So for me, just doing the virtual therapy for now. And hopefully, when my kids get older, I will have more time to do the things that I love and get more passionate about what I can offer. But for now, I'm still in survival mode. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old, and they're the little dictators of our house, and I'm okay with that. And, I'm also taking it day by day. So I do have my website, which is leonahusman.com. Simply put, just my name. You can contact me there. I have an Instagram, which I'm not completely active. I had to give myself some love and compassion and realize that creating content is a full-time job. And it's a
Yes,
beautiful
girl.
thing when done right. But my Instagram is Leona Huseman. Same thing. You can find me there. DM me. I'm always open to helping people with, quick questions, or more importantly, try to help link you with a resource. So that's the best way.
Thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I could talk to you forever, but we're gonna have a part 2.
Yeah, we probably will. I'm
Yes.
good with that. I'm good with that.
Yes. Yes, I love it. Thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely.